Hey there, buddy. Welcome back to another spine-chilling episode on my horror channel, where I dive deep into the darkest corners of the human experience. In this video, I am bringing you a captivating story that will grip your imagination and haunt your thoughts long after it ends. This isn't just any horror tale. It's a profound exploration of trauma, loss, and the shadows that linger in our minds. If you crave stories that send shivers down your spine and keep you guessing until the very end, hit that like button. If you're excited, subscribe for more terrifying content, and don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps me bring more chilling tales to life. Now let's dive into the depths of despair and uncover the secrets that lie within. My new patient is literally possessed. On December 21st, 2017, sheriff deputies responded to a wellness check in the general area of Tehachapi, California. Call came from the mother of a minor child who stated that the child's uncle had lured them out there to attack without provocation. The man attacked and gave chase, going so far as to pursue their car on foot as she drove away. Officers located the man and quickly noted that his behavior was vacillated wildly. Initially, he launched himself at the officers, only to pull back, fall to his knees, and beg for help. He introduced himself as Catalin and asked for help again, only to cut off and begin screaming the following phrase: "Fuck you, Robert. Fuck you, Robert. Fuck you." Catalin was booked into the central receiving facility. Catalin's appearance was of great concern. Most disturbingly, both his chest and abdomen kept bulging and receding, rolling like waves. Whenever one of these waves crested, Catalin choked and his eyes turned a strange but unmistakable yellow. Shortly after booking, Catalin asked for a chaplain. This request was denied. Shortly after denial, Catalin flew into what was assumed to be a substance-induced frenzy, wherein he tore the metal grating off his cell and proceeded to vomit copious amounts of dark, foul-smelling fluid. The volume of vomit was so significant it covered all of the cell floor and much of the hallway beyond. Officers noted that Catalin's eyes were glowing yellow. A chaplain was called. Catalin said he didn't know how to pray but needed someone to pray for him. Chaplain asked why, to which Catalin responded that he was possessed. The chaplain asked, somewhat doubtfully, if Catalin was hoping for an exorcism. This question incited a hysterical outburst from Catalin, who repeatedly screamed, "No exorcism. No exorcism. It has to stay inside." Due to prior experience with another agency inmate, a representative from the sheriff's office facilitated contact between Catalin and an agency representative. After a brief interview, the agency brought Catalin into custody where he remains. At this time, Catalin is the only confirmed case of demonic possession incarcerated at AHHNASCU. Catalin is a 34-year-old male approximately 5 feet 6 inches tall. One eye is brown and one is yellow. He suffers extensive chronic bruising on his chest, stomach, and back. Has a full-body matrix-like rash that has been described as web-like. Catalin is pleasant and cooperative, although he suffers from major depressive disorder and severe anxiety relating to the possibility that the entity inside him will escape. He has also expressed severe anxiety over the question of who or what will keep the entity contained once he dies. Given that Catalin is a essentially biological maximum security prison, and that containment of his prisoner aligns with agency directives, he has been granted T-Class designation. Lying isn't always a sin, but I still don't forgive Robert for the lies he told. Robert lost his life. That's what his mother says. Robert lost his life. That's a lie. Robert didn't lose his life. He stole it from himself. But I get it. Sometimes a good lie is the only tether to your sanity. The lasso keeping your demons at bay. Maybe if Robert had told himself more lies, he'd still be alive. But maybe not, because Robert already lied a lot. Lies like, "I'm okay. You don't have to worry about me. Everything's fine, dumbass, really." If I could, I'd say, "Fuck you, Robert. Fuck you for lying. Fuck you for hiding. Fuck you for letting me love you so much for so long. Fuck you for loving me so much for so long." He used to say I was the only person who made him comfortable. Paradoxically, comfort made Robert uncomfortable. Whenever he felt too comfortable for too long, he ruined it. He ruined it for the last time by launching into a gloriously unhinged rant that ended with him telling me, "You're the only thing that feels like home, and I love you so much, but I hate you even more, and that will never stop." I don't think he was lying when he said that, why I left. His mom found him 9 days later, broke into his apartment, saw him slumped against his bathroom wall, and immediately took 7 pictures of his body that she texted to me along with the message, "Are you happy now, you fucking freak?" The pictures were bad because he'd been dead for a while, but the decomposition wasn't the worst. The worst was the smallness of him. How flat, Hollow, empty he looked. Not like there was nothing left, but like there had never been anything at all. His mom barred me from his funeral. I didn't hold it against her. She needed someone to blame. And strictly speaking, I am to blame for a lot of Robert's misery. But at the same time, holy shit. We never dated. Never even tried. We were too enmeshed. Too damaged. And we knew each other too well. When you truly know someone, and that someone truly knows you, it's not romantic. It's not beautiful. It's just terrifying. And even if that's not true, so what? The last thing Robert ever said to me was, "You're the only thing that's ever felt like home, and I love you so much, but I hate you even more. And that will never stop." And the last thing I ever said to him was, "Fuck you, Robert." 6 days later, he was dead. 3 days after that, his mother found his body and sent me pictures. I stared at those photos for a long time. Then I watched The Land Before Time. That was Robert's favorite kid movie. That's why he named our cat Littlefoot. I thought watching it in memory of him would make me feel close to him, but it just made me sob until I thought I was going to throw up my own guts. A few days after that, his mom sent me the last text I ever got from her. "There's a bunch of your shit at his apartment, so come get it before I burn it." I could think of nothing worse than entering Robert's death-suffused apartment. But curiosity is the leading cause of death for cats, and I am no exception. See, Robert and I never lived together. We were never even romantic. Enmeshed, yes. Devoted, of course. Codependent, you bet. But in love? Not really. God, I hope not. God, I hope. Anyway, Robert was almost dangerously protective of his private spaces, and his cheap apartment was no exception. I'd only ever been inside it twice, so I wanted to know how anything that was mine could have possibly ended up there. That's the only reason I went. Curiosity. The scent of death was waiting for me when I opened the door, but it wasn't as strong as I'd feared. I drifted through his apartment like a ghost, traversing the liminal space it now occupied between Robert's home and an empty place. I wondered if his ghost was walking with me. The thought was infuriating. I crept through the living room, kitchen, hallway, even the bathroom with its body-shaped stain. It took more time than I should have. I didn't see anything that was mine. Until his bedroom. Utilitarian and bare, colorless and impersonal. It made me ache. The only pop of color was a lilac moto jacket draped over a cardboard box. I recognized the jacket because I'd given it to him years ago, on the day I told him I was transitioning. That was also the day he fucked up beyond repair with Cassie and their daughter. I picked the jacket up. For half a second, I was convinced he was inside it, growing back into existence in my arms, mostly because I could smell him, warm, the faint undertone of bitter growth, like a dying garden in the dog days of summer. As his scent enveloped me, the room around me faded into a whirlwind of images, enfolding me into yet another liminal space, this time the one between memory and reality. That brings me to the real reason I didn't want to go to Robert's apartment. There's this thing I do. If I touch an object, and if that object is or was important to someone, then the memories attached to that object start projecting themselves in my head like a simulation. It sounds crazy. It is crazy. When I picked up Robert's jacket, I fell into one of the memories attached to it. Gray skies, bitter air swirling with snowflakes. I was sitting on the sidewalk with Robert. He was heartbroken and humiliated. He'd so badly wanted a family and had managed to make one, but he'd fucked it up, just like he fucked up everything else. Cassie had the patience of a saint combined with the naivety singular to very young women intent on healing their damaged boyfriends. But Robert was too much even for her. She'd been right to leave him, and he knew it, so there was nothing to say. Seeing him curled over himself and sobbing so hard his entire body shook was one of the worst moments of my life, and that's saying a lot. I shrugged out of my jacket and threw it over his shoulders, then drew him in for a hug as some stranger gawked at us. It was awkward. All my hugs are awkward. Robert leaned in anyway and kept crying, tears hitting the jacket alongside snowflakes. Then the memory changed. Snowflakes faded to darkness, cold deepened to warmth. Robert was sleeping, curled underneath that stupid coat. 1,000 images of 1,000 nights superimposed over each other, each almost but not quite identical. He slept with it, used it like a teddy bear. The scene evaporated when I threw the coat back onto his bed. Tears streamed down my face as a fresh wave of rage crashed inside my chest. I looked at the box again. It had my name written on it, Catalin. On top was a note. "Please don't remember the bad things." "Oh, fuck you," I whispered. I recognized everything inside. The ragged, stuffed Pikachu with a sunken face, the dusty blue ribbon from a spelling bee 20 years past, a hand-knitted orange scarf, a green collar with a silver tag that said Littlefoot on one side, and if found, contact Katerina or Robert with my childhood phone number listed underneath. Thought of him holding on to all of these things for so long was too much. Beyond too much. Crushing. Fuck, it was crippling. If I were strong, I'd have left that box and everything in it on the bed for his mother to burn. But I'm not strong, so I shrugged into the jacket. Snowflakes swirled again as his scent, so like a dead garden, crept over me, and took the box to my car. Then I drove out to the carnival. Neither Robert or I ever left the town where we were born. It sucks, but living and dying in the same place does have perks, like knowing all the awesome secret hangout spots. One of our spots was an abandoned carnival out in the canyon. 70 years ago, a carnival stopped in town the night before the most devastating earthquake in the county's history. All the performers died. A few of the animals survived, but they had neither ability nor inclination to pack away the game booths and rides. The big top is long gone, the prizes pilfered or rotted into the sand, but the structures remain, and the great rusted loop of the sketchiest-looking roller coaster ever made still rises over the desert. Robert and I weren't in love. At least I don't think so. Shit, hope not. We were enmeshed, though, beyond enmeshed. The carnival isn't where it started, but it's relevant because it is the place where I first saw Robert's demon. Yes, his demon. A demon followed him around. A literal demon. I already told you I see memories when I touch things. I also see memories when I touch people. I always saw Robert's too. After my mom died, I started seeing something else when I touched Robert, his demon. We were 10, and we'd snuck off to the carnival after school. I hugged him. I don't remember why anymore. When I pulled away, I saw the demon between us. It looked almost like his dad, just wrong. Like something pretending to be him, just way scarier. Before I knew it, the demon, crooked, uncanny valley imitation of his father, slithered forward, pushing us apart, and it wrenched Robert's mouth open. Before I could even react, Robert screamed and shoved me away. I know how it sounds. Even after we talked about it, after Robert calmed down, after told me how he'd seen that thing crawling after him every day for as long as he could remember, I didn't think much of it. I actually kind of thought we were both losing it, and I wasn't even worried it. That kind of hallucination made perfect sense to me, given that Robert's father killed my mother. See, when my dad walked out, Robert's father stepped up. He started dating my mom. I know having a parent move on is usually hard for kids, but I didn't care because I got to see Robert every day, until his dad killed my mom, and then himself. Afterward, I visited Robert at his foster home whenever I could. All he did was sleep when I came over. He was afraid to sleep alone. Well, no. Technically, he was afraid to lay down. He was afraid he'd die if he laid down too long. This is because he watched his dad die flat on his back, drowning in his own blood from his self-inflicted gunshot wound. So whenever I came over, we sat back to back, leaning against each other. Then we looped our arms together. For weeks, that was the only way he could sleep, leaning against me, because he knew I wouldn't let him fall. Anyway, that doesn't matter. What matters is this. The day I saw Robert's demon for the first time, Robert said, "It's my dad, and he keeps telling me to kill you." But I never would, Kat. Never. I knew Robert would never hurt me. He was so relieved when I told him that. The day I picked up the box from Robert's apartment, I sat under the roller coaster remembering all of this. I fell asleep, half hoping the rusted, sand-scoured metal would collapse and crush me. It didn't. I went on with my life. In the weeks following Robert's death, I had to hold stuffed animals to help me sleep. I collect used stuffed animals because there are almost always happy memories attached to them. And because they're not my memories, they comfort me without any baggage. But grief is weird, and one night I needed the baggage. I grabbed that sunken little Pikachu from Robert's box. The memory washed over me. A frozen winter's night, so cold it takes your breath away. We were at a buffet with both sets of parents. Robert and I were misbehaving. Robert had beaten up the buffet mascot, which made me laugh so hard I gagged. Once seated, got into a food fight. When my mom yelled at us, I yelled back, which made Robert laugh so hard that Dr. Pepper came out his nose and sprayed everything on the table. My father promised to let us play the claw machine if we'd shut up and behave. We loved claw machines, so of course we agreed. He gave us each $10 to play. Robert didn't win, but I got a small stuffed Pikachu. I gave it to him because he loved Pokemon. Reliving that memory was like holding Robert on one of his good days. The good days were the only days Robert and I ever held each other, and we didn't have many good days. I told you I see memories when I touch things and people. That's why I didn't shake your hand when you came in, and why I hate being touched. You think you're going in for a regular handshake when a wave of unspeakable trauma washes over you, and you have to smile like you didn't just mainline hell. I know that's why Robert barely let me touch him. And to be fair, I didn't ever let him touch me because Robert is the only person who saw into me the way I saw into him. I didn't like being seen any more than he did. That's why we fought at the end, because he saw into me at the exact wrong time. It was my birthday. Robert surprised me my mom's brownie recipe. And you know it was my birthday. I was thinking about her anyway, and the brownies just drove it all home. I started wishing for what might have been, for the life I'd have if she was still in it. It made me cry. I don't usually cry. I wasn't even crying hard. But I was crying enough for Robert to notice. He came in for a hug before I could put my shields up. I will never forget his face. The shock, the guilt, the sadness, and the rage. I'll never forget his voice either when he said, "No matter what I do or how long it's been, that's always going to be the first thing you think when you look at me. That's why you won't. Why we'll never. That's not why, Robert." I don't really know how we got from "that's not why" to "you're the only thing that ever felt like home and I love you, but I hate you even more." But we did. That's another reason I know lying isn't always a sin. Because if Robert hadn't seen the truth in me that day, I think he would still be alive. The night after I held the Pikachu, I watched The Land Before Time again. It made me remember Littlefoot, our cat. That made me go back to Robert's box and pull out Littlefoot's collar. It's my favorite memory of all time, which is why I can barely stand to remember it. We were 6 years old, playing in the yard on a golden, impossibly hot day. We heard a pitiful, tiny meow and followed it to the alley behind my house. It was suffocatingly hot, even in the shade where we saw the meower. A little gray cat. Robert named him immediately, and we went to bug my mom for a collar. She took us to buy a collar and even a name tag. It was a little green heart. Robert tenderly clasped it around Kitten's neck as it clambered into his lap, purring. I looked up. There, in the memory I knew so well, was something I had never seen before. Robert's demon, grinning at us across the yard. But instead of looking like a wrong version of Robert's dad, it looked like a wrong version of Robert. I dropped the collar back into the box, gasping like I'd just been plunged into ice water. I don't know what I thought. I'd only ever seen the demon when I touched Robert. Not in other memories, not in real life, just when I touched Robert. So I decided that it was my mind playing tricks, turning Robert into a monster for leaving me. I didn't think about it again for a week. When I picked up the ragged little Pikachu for another devastation binge, I luxuriated in the claw machine memory again until I saw the way my dad looked at Robert. Distaste. Pure distaste. Robert had adored my dad, but Dad hated Robert and didn't even try to hide it. If lying isn't always a sin, then telling the truth sometimes is. My dad's open disdain for a child made him one hell of a sinner. As if to emphasize that, I saw the demon standing over his shoulder, leering at me. Half its face looked like the wrong Robert monster, but half its face just looked like Robert, and that half was screaming. I dropped the Pikachu and put on the jacket. The snowy day memory descended, including the gawping figure on my periphery. But when I focused on that figure, it was Demon Robert. Feeling very frightened, I picked up the blue ribbon. 4th grade, exactly 3 weeks after his dad killed my mom. Robert's first day back at school. I'd been back for a week already, subsuming my grief in the school spelling bee, which I'd just won. I smiled as I marched off stage because it was the only way to keep from screaming. The smile was breaking apart. Tears were welling up even as that awful grin spread so wide it felt like it was splitting my head in half. I found Robert in the crowd, locking on him like a drowning person on a life raft. He looked hollow and ancient, but when he saw me, he smiled back. When I sat by him, he started to cry. He was still smiling, though, just like me. "What's wrong?" I asked. "I thought you wouldn't want to be my friend anymore." "Why?" "My dad said so. After he died, he told me it's all my fault." I hugged him with particular fierceness, then pinned my ribbon onto his shirt. "You're my best friend, Robert. That will never stop. No lie, no lie." As the words left my mouth, I saw the demon over his shoulder. Half monster, half screaming Robert. I dropped the ribbon and picked up the scarf. Knitted it for him when we were 11. He wore it until junior high. I found myself transported to his foster home 20 years ago. We were on his narrow bed, sitting back to back with our arms looped and the scarf draped across both our shoulders. "Cat." His voice reverberated through his back and into mine. "I'm so scared. I see my dad every night. He keeps telling me to kill you." I looked over and saw Demon Robert in the closet. One half of his face was grinning, the other was screaming. Gasping, I tossed the scarf away and picked up the last thing in the box. A picture of his daughter, Sadie. I recognized that picture. It had held pride of place on every bathroom mirror Robert had since the breakup. Why was it in my box? Surely he meant for Cassie to have it, or even his mom. Why me? I looked at that photo for what felt like a long time. Then I picked it up. The memory I saw was of Robert's suicide. He'd been holding it when he killed himself. I'm sorry, when he lost his life. As I stood over his bleeding body, screaming, something crawled out of him. A thing that looked like him, but like a broken version of him. a version of him with half a face that was his and half a face that was a demon. Before I could move, that thing took my hands. The touch calmed me down because I knew that touch. Whatever else this thing was, it was at least partly Robert. That was enough to make me hug it. "Help Sadie," he whispered. His voice was wrong but familiar, just like the rest of him. "I can't keep it away from her, but you can. You're a jar of clay. You hold everything in and never let anything out." Unbidden, an image rose to mind of Sadie. Sadie with a face that was half hers, and half grinning monster. It made me want to scream. "How do I help her?" "By remembering the treasure," he said, "and putting the bad things in and not letting them out." Then he was gone, and so was the memory. I was back in my room, clutching his daughter's baby picture and sobbing. He used to call me that. A jar of clay, some religious reference. His dad was pretty religious before. Well, you know. I asked him to explain it once. He said a jar of clay is an everlasting receptacle both for treasure and for things that need to be locked away. "That's you," he said. "It's a good thing, I promise." No lie?" I asked. "No lie." I still didn't really get it, but that didn't stop him from calling me a jar of clay. Anyway, it'd take too long to tell you everything that happened after I saw Robert's suicide memory. It would hurt too much, besides, and this has already been so long and painful. I'm sorry. If I tell you more than the bare minimum, I won't be able to talk. This is all I can say. You know how I said Robert and I knew each other better than we knew ourselves? That's how I knew what he, or at least his ghost, or whatever it was, wanted me to do. He wanted me to share all the good memories with his daughter while making sure his demon didn't come for her. I tracked down everything of his that I could find. It was hard. His mother had already taken so much. There was no chance that she'd let me into her house. Instead, I started where I could, my dad's house, where Robert and I spent so much time and left so much shit over the course of our childhood. It was hard being there. It was hard when my dad wouldn't meet my eyes, and even harder when I accidentally caught him looking. I ignored him and got it to work. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I knew it when I found it. It was Robert's stuffed dog, an ancient stiff dog, kind of an heirloom, one his dad had before him, and his grandpa before that, and his great-grandfather before that. It was the only thing he'd been able to grab when CPS took him after the murder. The other kids at his foster home were assholes about it, so he hid it at my house and clearly forgot. When I picked up that dog, two things happened. First, I saw a memory from when we were 16. I was angry and giving him the silent treatment. That freaked him out. The silent treatment always freaked Robert out, unless he was the one giving it. He was trying to make me tell him what was wrong. You know what sucks? It wasn't that I didn't want to tell him. It was that I couldn't. That's one of the problems I always had with him. One of the things I always did to him. He called me a jar of clay again. "You're one heavy motherfucking jar of clay. I wish I had half your stoicism, Cat." Really? No lie. That memory melted away and others melted in. I don't know how to explain these memories. I told you that touching someone is a surefire way to mainline trauma. When I touched that toy dog, mainlined pure horror. Robert and his father, and even his father, all carried and crushed by an overwhelming wave of horror, by a demon. His entire family, generation after generation, being stalked by this broken, grinning monster, something that hunted them, that sank its claws in deepest, until it pulled those claws down and shredded them to ribbons. One of those ribbons was Robert's father killing my mom. An older ribbon was his great-grandfather beating one of his own sons to death in a drunken rage. And one of those ribbons was Robert shooting himself in the head while holding his daughter's baby picture against his heart. But the memories showed me something even worse. This thing, this demon, this destroyer, wasn't just sinking its claws into Robert when he died. It was worming its way inside him. It was trying to take him over, to actually be Robert, because once it was Robert, it could, and promised to, do everything it wanted. And all it wanted was to destroy. It wanted to destroy his mom and Cassie. It wanted to destroy me. Most of all, it wanted to destroy Sadie. And it wanted to use Robert's hands. Robert fought, of course. Robert fought it his entire goddamn life, even before he knew what he was fighting. That was the reason he killed himself, because he was scared he was losing the fight, and he thought dying was the only way to protect who he loved. He took his own life to try and take out the monster, only he hadn't killed it. He'd only killed himself. I was crying so hard I didn't even notice my dad until he touched my shoulder. I jumped, thinking of demons crawling inside and commandeering my hands like a puppet master. My dad was looking at me, the first time he'd looked into my eyes in half a lifetime. "Hey, Catalin, I wanted to tell you something." I patted the floor even though it was the last thing I wanted to do. He sat down like it was the last thing he wanted to do. When he saw the stiff dog in my hands, his mouth quivered. "I wanted to tell you that a good man lives his life for other people. You've done that. This was the first time The very first time that he'd acknowledged me as a man. Robert did too. But I didn't. His voice got thick. I wasn't a good man. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, baby. He was right. If any of this was anyone's fault, it was his for leaving. I wanted to push him away. I wanted to spit in his face, to tell him he wasn't a good man, had never been a good man, would never be a good man, that he'd as good as killed my mother. Instead, I grabbed his hands. I understood instantly that I didn't have to tell him any of those things, because he already knew. You are, Dad. To my horror, I started to sob. So did he. You're a good man. You always were. You're the best father anyone's ever had. It was a lie, every last word. But lying isn't always a sin. After that, I went to Cassie's house. I lied about grabbing Robert's things for his mother, but she wasn't fooled. The only person Robert's mom hates more than Cassie is me. That's probably why she let me in. But Cassie's always been good that way. It's why I've never been able to hate her, even when I desperately wanted to. Once again, I didn't really know what I was looking for until I saw it. A Build-A-Bear I'd bought Sadie for her 6th birthday. I looked around to make sure Cassie wasn't watching, then picked it up. Robert's memory, he and Sadie sitting on the floor. If I ever scare you, or if there's something you don't ever want to tell me or your mom, you tell Uncle Cat, okay? He'll do anything to help you. He'll always keep you safe. I know, Daddy. Demon Robert crept up beside me. Together we watched his memory. He didn't look like a demon anymore. Not even half of one. He just looked like Robert. I can't be you, Cat. I wish I could. I wish we could have been. But it ate me and it'll eat her. I thought I could save her, but I was wrong. You thought you could save me, but you were wrong. You can save her for me. Fuck you, Robert, he said. Fuck you. I threw the bear down and picked up something else. Anything else. Anything to not see the promise he made the daughter who wasn't mine, or the broken version of his dead self begging me to right his wrongs. What I touched was a baby toy. A gentle memory. Robert playing with Sadie in a pool of sunlight on a threadbare carpet. All sweet, all good, all bright, except for the demon lurking in the corner. I knew then what I had to do, what I wanted to do, because Dad's right. A good man lives his life for other people. I don't know if I'm a good man, but Robert didn't know if he was a good man either, and he still lived his life for other people the very best he could. At that moment, Sadie walked in, hollow-eyed and lifeless as Robert had been at Spelling Bee Day all those years ago. I wiped my eyes and almost tried to smile, then thought better of it. Hi, Cat. She sat down across from me. She looked so much like Robert, it took my breath away. She was 10, exactly the age he'd been when our parents died. Sadie, I said gently, you Dad loved you more than anything. Her face crumpled. She shook her head, then started to get up. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the baby photo. Look, she looked at me, those eyes that were just like her father's filling with tears. Behind her, shimmering like a mirage, was an awful, familiar silhouette. The demon, a grinning monstrosity with no sign of Robert in its face. Her father's demon. Her birthright. Coming into being to shred her like it had shredded her father. I had no time. I had to share the treasures. Spill out all the treasure for other people to remember, so there'd be room to trap what could not be allowed to roam free. You see this picture? It's you. On your 1st birthday. He kept it everywhere he went. Even though he wasn't here, he kept you with him. She gave me a look I'd seen on her father's face 10,000 times. That's why I knew exactly what to do, which was stuff the photo into her hands. She climbed clumsily to her feet and bolted, but at least she took the photo with her. Is it true? I looked up, startled. Cassie was in the doorway. You don't have to lie for him. You shouldn't. I'm not lying. I wanted so badly to cry, but couldn't. The only reason he stayed away is he thought you were better off without him. That's all. The way her face twisted broke my heart all over again. Why? I don't know. Bullshit. You're the only one he ever talked to. That's not true. He wrote his suicide note for you. Her voice was longing and loathing in equal measure. It was one sentence. Just a single line telling me to remind you and Sadie how much he loves you. No lie. Only it was a lie. But when Cassie finally relaxed, I knew that it hadn't been a sin. We talked for a long time. When we were done, she gave me a hug. That's Cassie. No wonder Robert loved her. Then I went home and tried to make a plan. I knew what I had to do, but I wasn't sure how to do it. So I sat there for a while, thinking. I didn't know what the monstrosity was. A demon, probably. Isn't that what it always is? A demon from the depths of hell, come to torment the innocent. How do you defeat a demon? Having not stepped foot in a church since my mother died, I wasn't sure. But I'd absorbed enough religion and pop culture to know that Bibles and crosses were the first main line of defense. So I dug out my mom's Bible and crucifix and held them, expecting something. Power maybe. Hope at least. But I felt nothing. It wasn't that they felt wrong. They just felt empty, inert. No strength, no energy, no hope. Powerless, inanimate, dead. No, not dead. Things that had never been alive in the first place. So I thought harder. What is a demon? Hatred, as far as I could tell anyway. What's the opposite of hate? And that gave me an idea. I went to Robert's box and picked up the Pikachu. Instead of memory descending, warmth flowed through my hands, living, moving, joyful, and powerful. So I stuffed the Pikachu in my back pocket, pinned the spelling bee ribbon over my heart, shrugged into the lilac jacket, heavy and reassuring on my shoulders. Most importantly of all, hanging from a chain where a normal person might wear a saint's medal, was Littlefoot's name tag. It felt warm and powerful in the hollow of my throat. These things felt right. They felt strong, and they felt true. Not exactly the stuff of which the armor of God is made, but they were reminders of the truest, fiercest love I've ever received and ever given. And that was armor enough. I drove out to the place it all began, or Carnival, right under the rusting roller coaster. It was waiting for me. I wasn't afraid. I marched across the sand. Scraps of warm, loving memory drifted around me as the demon shimmered into being, a stark, eternal darkness against the star-swept sky. And I felt it. It was evil, but it was power. True, incomprehensible power. Overwhelming, ravenous strength crashing over me and under me and around me like a cataclysmic earthquake, tearing my force field of memory, my shield of love, shreds and the shreds into nothing. I wasn't mainlining trauma. I was mainlining hate. I knew then why Robert had been doomed to fail. This was a curse. This was a monster. This was darkness. This was the monster under the bed. This was selfishness. This was destruction. This was something other. This was the Borg. This was Morgoth. This was hatred incarnate. This was the total absence of love. This was an obscenity older than time, an abomination that wanted to sink its teeth into the throat that sings the song of creation and tear it out. Love was nothing against it. It was nothing against it. It was going to win, and its prize was worse than death, to take me over and use my hands to destroy. And it was all Robert's fault. As his demon's true form bore down on me, swelling and billowing across the sky, blotting the stars and laying bare the folly of my plan, terror overwhelmed me, and despair, and hatred. But I didn't want to die that way, not in the dark, hating the person I loved more than anything in the world. Without thinking, I cupped Littlefoot's name tag in both my hands. Warmth swallowed me and light, and it was summer afternoon and Robert was tenderly clasping the collar across our kitten's neck. "You're not a stray anymore," he says. "You belong to us now, Littlefoot, and we love you." The abomination slammed into me with the force of a tsunami right as Robert looped his arms through and pressed his back to mine. And then we really were 10 years old again. A lifetime rewound. A lifetime to relive and do everything right so he and I and everyone would finally be okay. My mom would live, and we would save his dad. We had time. All I had to do was wait until the darkness passed through me and moved on. Only it wasn't passing through me. It was hitting something hard, something solid, and piling up, clinging to me, filling me, suffocating me, drowning me, and it was because of Robert, because Robert was holding on and blocking it, keeping it inside me, keeping it from going away, and it was done. Robert let go. When my knees gave way, he caught me and helped me to the ground. Only it wasn't Robert. It couldn't be Robert. Robert was dead. Only when I turned to look, his eyes were staring into mine. Remember, not his eyes. Sadie's. What? I couldn't breathe. What was wrong with my chest? "Honey, what are you doing here?" Sadie's voice was shaking. It's my dad. He told me you were here and memories crashed over me. Robert's voice, broken and ragged and terrified. "My dad told me to kill you. My dad told me to help you." For a wonderful second, I was light and whole and happy and above all, triumphant. Robert had broken the curse in more than one way. If he'd just held on a little longer, I could have told him. I could tell him that we all needed him, that none of us were better off without him, that we all loved him more than he could ever. Darkness drowned me then, and hate. Hate that I could never have imagined. Hate that devours, hate that corrodes, hate that eats its way out to destroy. I don't know what Sadie saw in my face. I don't want to know. I just know that it made her run away, that it made Cassie send a text that said, "You ever come near my daughter again, I might actually kill you." I haven't seen either of them since. I don't think I ever will. Robert's demon hasn't escaped. The hatred is still here, right here. I'd say I'm mainlining hatred incarnate, only you can't mainline yourself. This is what I get to be now, until I die. A jar of clay. A prison for a demon that isn't even mine. It's all Robert's fault, and I hate him for it. I hate him. More than he could have feared, more than he could ever imagine. That's what I'd say to him right now. Fuck you, Robert. You were the only thing that felt like home and you burned yourself down anyway. I hate you. I will always hate you. I hate you more than you could ever know. I hate you so fucking much. But I love you even more, and that will never stop. No lie. And there you have it, brother. Catalin's haunting journey has come to an end, but the chills don't have to stop here. If you found this story gripping and want more spine-tingling content, make sure to hit that like button and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing from you. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Join my growing community of horror enthusiasts as I explore even darker tales and uncover the mysteries that lurk in the shadows. And remember, the night is always darkest before dawn. Until next time, keep your lights on and your doors locked, because you never know what might be waiting in the dark. Stay spooky, my brother.